Mike Johnson is the Speaker of the House. He's a deep supporter. He unites both those wings of the Republican Party, the fossil fuel billionaires with the theocrats.
So what she's talking about with the House, they're going to take the House, they're going to take, it doesn't matter. She just doesn't know that because she doesn't know what she's talking about. But this is what we're up against. These type of doo-doo-doos who Joy Reid puts out there as if they have some sort of insight or knowledge, but they really know nothing about what they're, and literally nothing about what they're speaking. This woman had words shoved in her mouth, and now she's just spewing them all over the desk. Okay, so I was scrolling through Instagram the other day, and all of a sudden, in my feed comes an Article 5 post from none other than NBC's Joy Reid, who was questioning some doo-doo. She wrote a book, it's going to be listed under her name, but even in the book, it calls the nation a democracy. This woman's clearly a progressive psycho, and I want to show it to you before I go ahead and start dismantling it, and then give some props to the fact that the comments section actually had some patriots in it. But here we go with the actual clip.
What do they want to change about the Constitution?
They want to radically transform it. The leader of this effort, a man named Mark Meckler,
So it's Nancy McLean, author of Democracy in Chains. That you would mean the Republic in Chains, would you not? Let's hear who her sources are.
Formerly head of Tea Party Patriots, now head of the Convention of States efforts, has said that they seek to roll back 115 years of progressivism.
Now, they want to roll back 115 years of progressivism. So let's go ahead and think about that, because some people may say, maybe you're a progressive and you're like, you know what? That would suck. I don't want to roll back 150 years of progressivism. It'd be more like just over a century. But let's go ahead and look at what we'd be rolling back and what we'd be keeping. So would we lose civil rights? No. Progressives were ardently against civil rights. Don't even get me started with this fake switch that took place. The Dixie Democrats have always been the Dixie Democrats. One of them came over to the Republican side. The rest remain Dixie Democrats, including Byrd, who stayed in the Senate until as late as 2010. So stop with that. You had nothing to do with civil rights. You hated civil rights. You hijacked that movement after it was inevitable that Republicans were going to get it through. So that would stay. So let's not have any worry there. What about slavery? Would we have any issues with slavery amendments? No, actually we wouldn't, because progressives were ardently opposed to ending slavery as well. 1913, that year rings a bell. So what did we have in 1913? Well, we had the worst president in United States history, in my personal opinion, in Woodrow Wilson, not because he was an ardent racist and whatnot. That was bad, but that's not even the damage that he did. The damage that he did was the two amendments that he promoted and actually was able to muster support enough to get ratified, one of which was the income tax, which before 1913 was ruled repeatedly to be unconstitutional. Only one time had it actually been enacted, and that was during the Civil War out of desperation. As soon as the war ended, that was pulled. And every attempt to get it through after that had failed in the court because it was absolutely unconstitutional. Now, decades later, after fighting, progressives finally found the climate in 1913 with the help of Woodrow Wilson to be able to pull it off. And hence the country was never the same. They imposed income tax on what they said would only be for the wealthiest of the wealthy. How'd that work out? So yeah, that's something we'd like to roll back, isn't it? I think so. Now, we've got, again, the 17th Amendment, which was passed in 1913. And let's take a look at that for a hot moment, shall we? The states had given up their sovereignty, okay, or at least a piece of it. The states had gone ahead and given up the right to the ability to elect senators, to appoint senators. All right. Now, maybe you don't know this, but senators on the federal level were never designed to be elected directly by the people. Why? Because everything was designed to be run through your local government, through the politician who's local to you, in your district, in your neighborhood. That's who you appeal to. So, yes, they would go ahead and appoint these senators. And if you get a Mitt Romney or another doo-doo like Liz Cheney, well, then enough people go to their local legislator and say, hey, this person's not representing us anymore. We want them out. When enough people do that, the legislature then pulls them. Whereas now, after the 17th Amendment, Mitt Romney gets to hang around for a full 6 years because no one has any power to remove him. So, yeah, would we like to roll that back and give the states back that power? Absolutely, we would. Look, this lady's a doo-doo, but let her finish.
Now, that sounds like big talk for a guy in a bar or something, but the fact of the matter is they have been steadily doing this. Our side has not been paying adequate attention. And if the Republicans manage to get hold of
their side has been at almost every single debate on any state legislative floor. There are 18 of them that are about to happen this particular year, and they have had their opposition on the floor for every single one, spewing fear, lies, and more garbage propaganda. And the fact of the matter is, everything they've done, along with the JBS so-called conservative society that itself fought to get an Article 5 convention called in its early days, now all aligned together with these Soros groups. They're absolutely not catching on late. Maybe this individual doo-doo did, but the rest of them did not.
Congress, and Mike Johnson is the Speaker of the House. He's a deep supporter. He unites both those wings of the Republican Party, the fossil fuel billionaires with the theocrats, and he will, I believe, and so does Common Cause and others who study this.
Common Cause. Two things with what she just said up to this point. Number one, House leaders have nothing to do with this, which just tells you this dude who knows nothing about the Article 5 process. The federal government is completely not involved in this. It doesn't matter if the entire House and Senate go Democrat or Republican or Libertarian. It doesn't make a difference because they don't have any say here. The entire point of the Article 5 Convention of States option that the founders put into the Constitution without debate, they all easily agreed that this was necessary, and the entire point of it was to avoid tyranny. The entire point of it was, if the federal government, and George Mason had actually articulated this, saying, and I paraphrase, are we really so naive to believe that if the federal government became a tyranny, that it would propose amendments to take away its own power? I mean, we weren't in the room, but you assume there's a chuckle there, and everyone goes ahead because it was unanimous agreement that it get added in. So what she's talking about with the House, they're going to take the House, it doesn't matter. She just doesn't know that because she doesn't know what she's talking about. But this is what we're up against. These type of doo-doo-doos who Joy Reid puts out there as if they have some sort of insight or knowledge, but they really know nothing about what they're, and literally nothing about what they're speaking. This woman had words shoved in her mouth, and now she's just spewing them all over the desk.
Convene such a convention. So this is something that would take away, has the potential in the various amendments they've proposed to undermine the fiscal basis of Social Security and Medicare, to undermine long established civil rights protections, to take away our capacity to protect the environment.
Okay, there's nothing in there that would touch civil rights. So that's another fear and scare tactic, another boogeyman that they're trying to bring out, and why they would even care about civil rights when they opposed them so heavily when it was a thing, when it was necessary and the legislation was going to be passed, and they opposed it so heavily. Why on earth now is this? They're going to take it away. We're not going to take it away. We put it there. Number one. Number two, this is not a Republican thing. Let me just get that straight. 2 out of 3 voters, period. Not 2 out of 3 Republican voters. 2 out of 3 voters support the topics. The topics on all 19 of the pieces of the resolutions that have passed right now. Okay, so there are 19 states on board, and all 19 of them have identical language. I have them all up on the website. It's term limits for all federal officials, it's fiscal restraints, and it's amendments on government overreach. All 3 of which are restrictive. There is no part of this that can add power, and that scares this little Marxist to death. Scares her to death. Okay, there's absolutely nothing in there that's going to do that. Now, as far as Social Security, you pay into that. What it's going to do is stop the federal government from being able to touch it. The reality of the matter is we're going to get a balanced budget amendment passed. And that scares Marxists to death because they can't operate any longer with this crazy inflation game that they play with our money. They're going to have to spend what they take in. You follow? This whole, you know, oh, well, we're just going to go ahead and cut another trillion here and another trillion there, and let's give another, you know, 3 billion to Ukraine. We're going to throw another few billion at Israel. You know what? While you're at it, throw a few billion at Taiwan just in case it becomes relevant, and then, you know, let's go ahead and keep donating. Let's give illegals, you know, all this money. Let's give them 10. Like, all that stops. All that stops because now it's clearly in the Constitution. Like, the fact that it's not clearly in there is what allows them to get away with this. And the fact that the courts have dropped the ball over a century is what allows the federal government to stick its tentacles into so many facets of American life that the 10th Amendment never allowed them to do. But the courts did. And we take that as being gold. So the courts need to be overridden, basically. And there's only one way. There's only one constitutional and peaceful way to do that, to override something from the Supreme Court. And that way is through constitutional amendment. The progressives understood this when they couldn't get income tax passed, and they got a constitutional amendment. In their case, it was for evil. But in this case, it's not. And the reality is anything that comes out of this convention has to get ratified by 3/4 of the states. Anyway, that's 38 states, 13 states, 13 individual chambers of states can end any amendment proposal that comes out. So the topics have to be universal. And these topics are 52% of Democrat voters, okay, were on board. There were another 24% who weren't sure, who didn't really know. That's fair. They don't know. But the fact of the matter is that's 74.2% of Democrat voters who are not necessarily opposed. These topics are universal, and it's about time we start looking at some of the issues that we agree on, because the fact of the matter is we can sit there all day yelling about stuff we disagree on, but there are issues. There are major issues that are going to take this country down, and it ain't going to matter at that point whether you're for abortion or against abortion or whether you're for this or for that, because the whole thing's going to come down. So it's about time we start taking a look at some of the things that we are all for, that we are all in support of, the major issues, and fix them. So let's let this doo-doo finish up here. And
Could not be more serious, and it's something that needs much more attention from all of us.
All right. Now, fortunately, okay, we've got, I went through the comments. Now, in Joy Reid's box, the comments were all pretty much Marxist. I mean, they're all Republicans, like everyone's still in the Matrix. They're still yelling about Republicans and Democrats. But like they still haven't figured out yet, the people that follow her, apparently, that both sides don't like us. They haven't figured that part out yet, right? Now supporters of convention of states have figured that part out. They realize that there are no Republicans and Democrats. They realize that there are only Americans and Marxists. And not every Democrat is a Marxist. So at this point, we need to separate the wheat from the chaff and take the actual classic liberals out of the Democratic Party. I don't care if they become Republican or not. That's not necessary here. What's necessary is that they join with other Americans on the issues that matter. This is not who we're going to elect. This is not, we're not asking them to vote for Trump. They should, but we're not asking them to do that. That's my opinion, not theirs. What we're asking them to do is to align with people on issues that we agree on. And if term limits, fiscal restraints, and government overreach are not 3 issues we can agree on, I don't know what we agree on. After watching what the federal government has been doing, not just under Biden, the executive orders have been pouring out of this federal government since Obama. Before that, but the significant ones, it went Obama, Trump, Biden, and it'll be whoever's next. These types of things need to get addressed. This use of regulatory agencies as weapons, things like the Patriot Bill, or the Patriot Act, these things can no longer be tolerated by us. And it's about time that we realize that we have the power to stop them. And we have the power to stop them through our local legislatures, not through the federal government. The federal government is broken, all right? It was created by the states, but now it's broken. And it needs to be fixed by the states. That's the way it's going to happen, through our local legislatures. So go ahead and do that. Let me show you a few of the comments that have come in on that post, which were encouraging to me, because these people don't even fully understand convention of states, and yet here they are, their instincts just speaking out for them. And I have to assume the person that reposted that video was someone on the left, or at least left-leaning, to even have, her in his feed. But here's one from Leo Sowers. All those things you mentioned are unconstitutional, so it sounds like they want the Constitution to function as it was intended. None of those powers were laid out in a drafting of the Constitution for the federal government that you listed. And he's absolutely right. Everything she talks about are not powers for the federal government. And that's the entire point. And no one's even saying get rid of these things. What we're saying is the states can handle these things. We don't need the federal government to be worried about work safety conditions. The states can handle that. Okay, that's not an issue for the federal government, right? And the list goes on. We don't need the federal government involved. We don't need a Department of Education. We don't need any of these organizations. All of this can be handled by the states. All of it. Anything that's not listed in the Constitution is not their responsibility, and the government absolutely needs to go back to being something that we healthily fear, rather than praise and worship and look to for guidance. Clearly, they don't like us. Clearly. Here's another comment. So no, they want to preserve the Constitution. That's absolutely right. Here's another one. The goal is to undo all the BS that has been snuck in the federal government through the Commerce Clause. Big one. Commerce Clause has been left wide open by the Supreme Court. This is what it is. This is what the movement is for. This is an opportunity for us to gather and do the right thing. This is an opportunity for us to finally flex a muscle as the people of this nation. We are the only people on earth who have this power. We are the only people on earth that, without going through an elected official in the federal government, can strip it of power. That's it. It's only us, folks. It's only us. Why? Because that's what a constitutional republic is. Because the Constitution is the rule of law, not whoever you elect. Those people are elected to uphold and defend the Constitution, not to write it. This is what makes our nation special. And people need to understand that and act on it, because we're running out of time. There's absolutely multi-threats to this nation right now on a grand scale, and they're coming to you. Yes, they're coming from outside ideologically, but they're coming from inside, from the federal government, as far as execution goes. And it's about high time that we go ahead and fix this problem. Until next time, I'll see you on Wednesday.
And like that,